Taylor, what is the beauty of astrology? It's very individual specific.
Yeah.
You can't apply the same formula, same thing to everybody, right?
Yes.
So even with corporates, depends, the hierarchy is there, the head of the organization, the middle management, the lower management. So when you sit, you have to sit with them, talk to them, understand where their challenges are, and then design solutions as per the requirement.
Yeah, amazing. She was born into a legacy that read the stars, quite literally. Ridhi Bahl, great-granddaughter of the Royal Astrologer of Jaipur, carries forward a century-old tradition with a modern, deeply human touch. She's an astrologer, Vastu Expert, and author, felicitated by the President of India for her work. But what makes her truly remarkable is how she blends intuition with intellect, heritage with heart. Today, we're decoding the cosmic design of life and how aligning your space and your spirit might just change your destiny. This presence, I think, carries into what we're going to talk about, the elegant virtue. So an elegant virtue is like honesty, trust, integrity, things of that nature.
Correct.
So do you think that this presence that you have, this elegance that you have, this inner stillness, it's something you were born with, or it's something that you cultivated or one can cultivate as they go through their life?
See, elegance is basically energy, and awareness is its source.
Yes.
Right? So when we start listening instead of assuming, when we start, stop reacting, instead, give a patient ear, what happens? The internal energy is aligned. And when the internal energy is aligned, it gives you that clarity.
Yes.
Right? And it's not just about me, it's about everybody.
Yes.
And when you get that internal clarity, you get the direction in life, and people who have been achievers and who have achieved in life, if you talk to them and if you analyze their life, what was it that led to them where they are? It is basically internal clarity.
Mm-hmm.
So internal clarity with this internal alignment of energy leads to what is your objective of life? What is the purpose of your life? Why you're here? So it basically leads to that, and that leads to empowerment,
Yes.
and that is what probably, anybody can achieve. And that is what has helped me also in achieving or doing whatever I'm doing today in life.
Because you're living your authentic self, your
Yes.
absolute authentic self. Everything is in alignment. We're also going to talk about how the stars are in alignment in a moment, which I cannot wait to hear about. But that was so beautifully said. I have to
Thank
say,
you.
the awareness is huge, right? Awareness
Yes.
is the first step for everything.
Correct.
We're going to talk about something today that's absolutely fascinating and I love, but even we've had people on from a very different, like banking, for example, or we've had from real estate development, or we've had other different areas, which we think is disconnected, but everything is connected, right?
Everything's connected.
Everything's
Everything
connected.
is connected.
Everything is connected. But that being said,
Yeah.
like you would think, holistically, that's a very different thing, but it's actually not. It's all interconnected. But
Correct.
it all their success is exactly what you said, which is self-awareness,
Yeah.
alignment,
Yeah.
your inner truth, and
Yeah.
making sure everything is in flow, right?
Correct.
And this comes from really knowing yourself, accepting
Correct.
yourself, and non-resisting a lot of things, right?
Yes.
Which-
Absolutely.
especially those things written in the stars, right?
Yeah.
Even if they're tough, we have to go with it. Okay.
Correct.
Well, thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you come from such a fascinating lineage. You can tell I'm excited, right? Okay, fascinating lineage. Your great-grandfather was a royal astrologer
Yeah.
to the king of Jaipur.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, please, I'm sure there's a lot of amazing stories there.
Yeah.
That's great. I'm curious, when you were little, did you always know that this would be your path, or did you get into astrology in your own mysterious way?
Well, no, as a child, I never thought I'll take this as a full-time career or get into it so deeply the way I'm involved now.
Yes.
So, my great-grandfather, like you mentioned, was astrologer to the king of Jaipur.
Yes.
And he in his lifetime had written some 200 books on astrology and astronomy. So the king would consult him before taking any important decisions.
Okay.
So
Yes.
he was that important a person for him.
Yes.
And when I was a kid, so I remember, scholars coming to our house, there would be discussions on his work, there would be seminars conducted on his work, and my grandmother would pull me along and take me to the seminars, which would not make any sense to me then, The only thing I could understand way back then when I would see these scholars working on his work was astrology is something which needs to be studied. It's not something which is a pseudoscience or something which means just talking about rituals or suggesting gemstones or doing some remedies. No. It's not that.
Okay.
It's a very deep subject which needs in-depth knowledge.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about that? I think that's what we need to start with.
Yeah.
We need to dispel this rumor. Okay.
Yeah.
Please tell us exactly what astrology is.
Okay.
Real, not the pseudoscience,
Yeah.
not what you're getting everywhere on Instagram.
Yeah.
Same thing like emotional intelligence. We get
Correct.
this, like this is, you get the Instagram version of it. Let's
Correct.
get the real version of it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So astrology is a guiding science, right? Now, how does it works? Now, you've heard of astronomy. What is astronomy? Astronomy is a study of planets,
Yes.
right? The impact of the planets on the solar system. Like you said, everything is connected.
Yes.
Everything is connected in this universe. Everything in the solar system is also connected. Be
Absolutely.
it the plants, nature, everything is connected. So astronomy is the study of the planets.
Yes.
And on the impact on each other, the planetary forces, the nature, the energies, the impact of these planets on human beings, on the living beings, is what astrology is all about.
Okay.
Right? So astrology, Taylor, I'll tell you something very interesting. Astrology is not just limited to human beings. In olden times when these kings were, ruling, so they would do astrology of the animals also. Animals like the horse they would use in a war.
Right.
The elephant they would sit and, go for a war on.
Yes.
Right? These animals also were of utmost importance. So astrology is basically, the impact of the planets, their energies on us human beings.
And everything is energy.
Absolutely.
I mean, we talk about this. I mean, this is a science.
Yeah.
Point.
Yeah.
At the same time, like we talk about like neuroscience and metaphysics and all these things.
Yeah.
And it's been proven. I mean,
Yeah.
they've split atoms. They did something to the atom in one part,
Yeah.
10 miles away, they did something else.
Yeah.
It reacts exactly the same way in the same time.
Yeah.
Everything is energy in waves.
Yes,
So if
absolutely.
there's everything. So that's our interconnectivity. Everything is interconnected.
Correct.
But everything is an energy force. We are all an energy force. So of course it matters. So if this is affecting your energy force and the way it's going through, of course. So going into battle, for example, you want to know if the horse is going to carry you or if there's something affecting it or what the outcome, you want to know these things.
Correct.
Because everything is of energy. So
Correct.
that's wonderful. It's very interesting to hear.
Yeah.
Now, I would just, before we get off this topic anymore,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you do hear people, I mean, you've made this into, I wouldn't say your life's work. I don't want to do that because I feel like that's very dismissive. I would say this is your passion. This is your purpose. And I think it's also your calling. I think when you're in the field that you're in, it's a calling, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
yes, it takes study. Yes,
Yeah.
it takes devotion. It takes all
Correct.
those things, but it takes a level of, I think, non-resistance, of sensitivity and a connection, right? With that.
Correct.
And you need to non-resist that connection, actually, I would think, right? More than anything.
True.
But I'm sure you come across people and you meet people that are really doubtful of this, or maybe they misunderstand. Let's give gracious a
Absolutely.
benefit of the
Yes,
doubt.
yes.
How do you manage that?
Okay, so the very first thought, moment you say astrology, the very first thought that comes to the mind of, when I meet people, they say, oh, it is a superstition. This is all rubbish. It's all money minting, a profession. We don't believe in all this. We don't want to get into all this.
Yes.
So see, Taylor, sadly, what has happened, the subject is not at fault, or you can't doubt the subject. It is the person who's been promoting this subject or, who's been practicing this subject. They have made it in such a way that, people have started to have doubts, right? So, they have been misguiding people or, since monetary part is involved, professionally people are doing it. So just to lure more clients, to get more customers, they've been spreading all, misinformation or trying to, do quick fixes, to make more money. And that is where the subject is getting a bad name.
Yes.
So, it's like, if a doctor is not able to treat you properly, it doesn't mean medical science is at fault. It is the doctor in concern. So same thing is with this subject.
Yeah.
The subject is not correct. A subject cannot go wrong. It is the person who's practicing it, can be wrong or, have been not practicing it honestly. And that is why, the subject is getting a bad reputation or a bad name.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's really important to clarify.
Yeah.
So it's It's really powerful. I
Yeah.
mean, you have an amazing family lineage. I mean,
Yeah.
over 200 books on this topic
Yeah.
is something. I will have to read one. Actually, are they
Yeah.
translated into English? Do they have it in English?
Yes, couple of them have
Couple of
been.
them?
In
Okay.
fact, so many of them been lost.
Yeah.
I don't have a track of them. I'm just left with 10, 12,
Yeah.
out of which couple of them have been translated into English also.
Okay.
Originally, these books were written in Sanskrit.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
they
so
were.
a few of them have been translated in Hindi, and
Okay.
one or two have been translated in English as well.
Now, if you were to give advice to somebody that really
Yeah.
wants to learn about this, just because I think the biggest thing you just said is like it's not the science itself.
Yeah.
It's the practitioner of the science.
Correct.
We'll say that, which
Okay.
let's not give any fault to that either. Let's just say, it's, for example, some people practice medicine really well, other ones don't, or in the law field, or in the
Yeah.
business field,
Yeah,
or in the real
yeah.
estate development, any field,
Any
right?
field, yeah,
Any
yeah,
field.
yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
not the science, it's the practitioner of it.
Correct.
So if somebody wants to understand the science better, not necessarily to be in the science,
Yeah.
but just to understand before they actually use it as a tool for them.
Yeah, yeah.
How would you suggest them starting?
So see, since I'm in this field and I know 90% of the astrologers I know have half knowledge or half big knowledge, and now courtesy YouTube and Instagram, there's more widespread, knowledge which is half big knowledge again,
Yes.
So I would advise somebody who wants to do it seriously, just want to study as a subject.
Yes.
Forget about practicing it, taking it as a profession, that's separate. But just want to study it, just want to pursue deep knowledge, get deep into the subject, needs to do a proper course, study the subject deeply from a knowledgeable guru or a knowledgeable teacher.
Yes.
And there are a lot of people I know who are really knowledgeable and have been promoting the science or teaching the science in the right manner. So you need to find that right person and then get into it. Another thing, Taylor, which is very important with astrology being such a deep subject, it doesn't comes in 3 months or 6 months. There are no crash courses, which a lot of them are available in the market, and a lot of people fall prey to that. They think in 6 months time or 3 months time they'll become astrologers. No, it doesn't happen. It requires time and patience.
Yeah, I can imagine it does. I mean,
Yeah.
like any science, right?
Yeah,
It does.
right.
And also the learning.
Yeah.
We learn about it. For
Yeah.
example, my experience and my journey for the certifications that I have,
Yeah.
you learn about it. You get the information that takes
Correct.
a certain period of time. It's
Yeah.
an investment of time and effort, but then you have to go out and you have to test it.
Yeah.
And you have to learn from it.
Absolutely.
And you have to make sure that you actually are a practitioner of it, right?
Yeah.
So if somebody is looking to find an astrologer, for example,
Yeah.
how would you suggest they find like a good one, if you will, one of these good practitioners?
Okay. So firstly, again, I'll say this point, don't fall to what internet is saying, what Instagram is saying,
Yeah.
right? A lot of people come to me saying, recently this lady came to me and said, this astrologer is big. So I thought maybe in terms of knowledge or maybe, she said, no, he has these many number of followers on Instagram and that is what makes him big. So now that should not be the criteria, to be very honest. That is first thing, right? Don't go to an astrologer who's been telling you a lot of remedies to do. Because astrology is not a science of remedies. It's a guiding science. It's a very logical and a practical science.
Yes.
It involves a lot of mathematical calculations, So it's not something, it doesn't suggest quick fix remedies. So don't fall prey to someone who's doing this.
Right.
Thirdly, and very important, don't go to an astrologer who tries to scare you.
Okay.
Right? Because the science is not to scare you. It is just to
Yeah.
give you a guidance and a direction in life.
Okay. We're going to skip a little bit ahead in these questions because you
Yeah.
just brought up a really important one.
Yeah.
What happens if it's something that you're telling one of your clients something that they may not want to hear?
Okay, so I get
Yeah.
cases like this, lot of
Yeah.
them like this, you know.
Yeah. Because
So-
I know people. I mean, I know people that very heavily rely on astrologers, and they
Yeah.
are point on with things.
Yeah.
It's not always the best news. Not always
Yes.
the best, right? So how do you
Yes.
manage that?
Okay, so I'll give you, answer this with the help of an example. So I remember 2 years back, this girl came to me and she was in a relationship, right? And the boy was also a nice boy, but somewhere they were a little confused about the future ahead. But they were deeply in love. And both of them, showed me their chart and they said they are having certain challenges and they wanted to know what the future looks ahead, And from the chart, I knew that things will not work out, But now, because they were so much in love and I could
Yeah.
not just bluntly say, no, it's not going to happen. But as an astrologer, it's my duty to tell them the truth. That's very, very important, not just to, pacify them. So then, I gave them, seeing the chart, certainly, I gave them a time frame. I said, see, this time frame doesn't look good for your relationship. If things, if you're able to sail through this time together, yes, things will be fine. Otherwise, I don't see things being too good between you. And both of you being practical and mature, think and, make a decision rather than, jumping to a conclusion. So initially, yes, there was a little disappointment, but then both of them said, no, we'll sail through this time, like how young lovers would say.
Yeah.
And then after a year, this girl calls me and says, no, now we called off the relationship, So, it depends on how tactfully you handle the whole situation.
I was about to say a huge thing for emotion. I mean, this is a lot of emotional intelligence, honestly, which is what we talk about very heavily on this program. It's not so much in what you're saying, it's how you say it. And in order to know that, you have to understand yourself first, right?
Absolutely.
Everything starts with ourselves, because you need to know. I mean, I imagine you're working with people where something has happened and it must trigger you in some way, shape, or form, because either, I mean, I'm maybe not this particular case, but other things where something went awry, it's something you may have felt, or maybe it just triggers you for some reason you're not quite sure. But then you need to know, okay, wait a minute, I need to be aware of this. I need to understand what's going on. And then I need to make sure I'm communicating in the most effective way for my client.
Absolutely.
Because you have a responsibility that way, right? This is your emotional intelligence. And so again, it's a, like in every profession, it's there. It's successful people, like you say, it's there. They focus because they have the awareness of it. And they don't
awareness and clarity. That's very, very important.
Exactly. Fantastic. Okay, that's a wonderful story. So thank you so much for telling us that. I was wondering, how do you deliver that news? Because I mean, I've only heard from my friends that have spoken to astrologers, and they're like, oh, they said this. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Like, how's that going? Taking that news, but actually how it's delivered. Fascinating. So it's really powerful. That you've merged tradition with modern education. So you have an MBA in symbiosis, right? And then a PhD in astrology in Vastu. That's amazing. That I want to hear about also. That's such an unusual blend. But I mean, is it such an unusual blend, or is it? I would have to say, because I have an MBA also, and I do something that's emotive, right? So we're thinking there's a huge disconnect. But like we were saying with energies and everything is interconnected, I don't think it's so disconnected, right? Maybe on paper, but I would love to hear that. I'd love to hear how those three things work together.
Okay. So see what education does, what are what is expected out of an educated person, or how education helps here. So see, now an astrologer, like especially with me, now I'm talking in my context and in modern times today, astrologer's job is not just limited to prediction. An astrologer is also a counselor. Like I gave you this example. So I have to counsel, he or she has to be a strategist also. Suppose, somebody comes with a business plan, what do I do? So, apart from telling what the stars hold, I have to strategize the whole thing also, right? Now, education, gives you that in-depth reasoning, right? You get into the depth of it. You are, you have reasoning. You can't just simply say, oh, the stars are staying like this, so this will happen. The other person who's educated, or even I myself, will first reason, if this is happening, why is this happening? So, Taylor, I'll take you a little back, how I got into it and how this is connecting there.
Please.
So it so happened that, after I was blessed with a son, I had a lot of health issues and major health issues, something very serious. And I was just 26 years of age. And, and there was a time when your body doesn't work, when you have to really push yourself, and getting up from the bed also becomes a challenge, that is the worst thing that a person can face. And that is what I was facing, and at such a young age. And a child. And I had to give up my job because my health was not allowing. I had major digestive issues. I could not eat. I could not function properly. And that was the darkest period of my life. Financially also I was struggling in life. Relationship wise also. So anything that can go wrong in a person's life was going wrong in my life, right? And that is where I thought, I seek the help of astrologers. And I started visiting astrologers, and, somebody would tell me, do this, other person will tell me to do some things which are very illogical and very irrational and very impractical. And that is where, one day came when I thought, and none of them were giving me results of what I was looking for. Then one day came, and then I thought, me being an educated person, what is that I'm doing? But then I had a lot of questions that why is this happening? When is this going to end? So I wanted the answers of this question, all those whys that were surrounding, that I had in my head. And that was the point when I thought, why not I get into the subject myself and get to know the answers of all the questions or all the situations that are happening in my life. And slowly, when I started getting into it, when I started studying the subject, and then there I could connect the dots, and then things that were happening with me made sense to me. That, okay, if this is happening, why is this happening?
Yes, amazing.
Right? Yeah.
I find this is often the case. I mean, we have we have so much similarity this way about, I
Yeah.
became interested in emotional intelligence for
Yeah.
myself first.
Correct.
That was the first part.
Yeah.
Because of different things, and also just, go through different phases of your life, and you're like,
Yeah.
okay, that's interesting. I'm noting that. And
Yeah.
this is what it's a pull,
Yeah.
as it was written, it's a
Correct.
pull.
Yeah.
And it's like in your case, it's
Yeah.
you're not necessarily, well, actually in your case, you're really healing something within yourself.
Correct.
But it's usually that case. And when it is that case, it's a very powerful thing because you're not just interested in it, but it's really a big investment because it's your whole self and being in it.
Correct.
So
Correct.
that's
Very true.
phenomenal.
Very true.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the world that we live in, right? It's
Yeah.
fast, it's digital, which we covered a little bit about,
Yeah.
and it's often disconnected, right?
Yeah.
But we talked about how everything's connected.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's a little bit of juxtapositioning.
Yeah.
How can something like astrology or Vastu really help the modern individual?
Okay, so see, there's a lot of information. There are a lot of choices that people have, and there's a lot of mental pressure. There's rising competition. There's lot of mental pressure from a small child till a elderly person. We all are struggling. We all are, facing our challenging. Everybody is having their own challenges, right?
Yeah.
Now, astrology here is a tool, right, which can help you navigate in life better. It's like, that GPS.
Yes.
When you go from one place to another, you switch on the GPS. So it's not that GPS is kind of, making the distance less. No, the distance covered is that much only. It's just giving you an option. So, okay, if you follow this route, it's going to take you this much time. If you follow this route, it's going to take you that much of time.
Mhm.
And what happens when you switch on the GPS, you get the clarity,
Mhm.
and okay, this much time. Okay, then you're more relaxed. And when you're more relaxed, the journey becomes smoother.
Yes.
So same is the case, and same is the role of astrology also.
Mhm.
When you know a certain challenge is going to come, astrologer will not be able to change that channel.
No,
The
it
challenge
is.
that is coming. I can just guide you. I can just tell you, Taylor, tomorrow it's going to rain heavily. Now you have some important things lined up. So now if you know, you can reschedule them. You can, bring about a lot of changes. So similarly, it can help you make the right decisions at the right time.
Right. It's like you're getting more data points.
Yes,
Yeah?
yes.
Now here's a question though. So
Yeah.
like I often, when I'm coaching people
Yeah.
and somebody says something to me and
Yeah.
I give them some options because they all have the answers within them, right? So I think we
Okay.
all also have the answers within us. This is
Correct.
like additional information, right?
Yeah.
I meet some resistance from people, which I always find like is the biggest roadblock
Yeah.
in their progress towards
Yeah.
from self-awareness to
Correct.
consciousness to the choice and
Correct.
the change, right?
Yeah, right.
How do you manage that resistance? Because that's going to make the journey so much harder for them.
Yes, certainly. Now see, like I said, as an astrologer, it is my job to tell them the truth.
Yes.
Make them realize that what the future holds in store, and certainly the choice of words I have,
Yes.
how sweetly or
Yeah,
how not so sweetly I tell them, but then yes. So see, now that's up to the client. How do they take it? They have
Yeah.
to accept it. Now here, where is that acceptance? Also, here also astrology helps by seeing the chart of the person. I can analyze it. I can make out, that whether this person is a stubborn person, whether he's rigid, whether he's a flexible person,
Yeah.
or whether he or she is emotional. Because a lot of people come to me and say that, oh, if there's something wrong written, don't tell us, we can't take it. Whereas there are people who come to me saying that if there's something wrong written, do tell us so that we are better prepared.
Yes.
Right? So
I'm in that camp. I'm
Yeah.
like, please tell me because
Yeah,
I'd
yeah.
rather know what I'm dealing with.
Exactly.
I'd rather
so
know.
now, I have to seek. Now here, as I said, the astrology is not just, astrology is not just about predicting
No,
the
no.
future. You have to be a counselor also.
Yeah, yeah.
So here the counseling part also comes. So, you have to sweetly, politely make the other person understand
Yeah.
that yes, this is there. And if he or she doesn't wants to, then it's their choice.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of emotional intelligence there,
Yeah,
a lot,
yeah,
because you have
yeah.
a lot of self-awareness, a lot
Correct.
of emotional regulation on your part,
Yeah.
and then also the behavior that comes from it, constructive and
Absolutely.
empathy, a lot of empathy, and a
Yes.
lot of different things. So this is fantastic.
Correct,
I love
correct.
learning about this.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've read that you've worked with Tata Steel, Reliance Industries, JSW, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It goes
Yeah.
on and on and on. Amazing corporate names.
Yeah.
How do you bring, and I'm fascinated by this, how do
Yeah.
you bring the spiritual science into the boardroom full of logic-driven people?
Yeah. So again, like I said, astrology itself is a logical subject,
Absolutely.
right? And now here comes the role of a strategist, right? Because with these big names, there are big stakes, right? And they all want to know how to strategize a particular situation, if the investments to be made, how to go about it.
And probably when, no?
Come again.
When is probably a big part of it.
Yeah, when is probably a big part of it, and how also is a big part of it, right? And that is where, I help them in designing. And again, it's all done very logically. It's not, something which I tell them, oh, it is like this, it's been written in the astrological scriptures, you have to follow it like this. Taylor, what is the beauty of astrology? It's very individual specific. You can't apply the same formula, same thing to everybody, right? So even with corporates, depends, the hierarchy is there, the head of the organization, the middle management, the lower management. So when you sit, you have to sit with them, talk to them, understand where the challenges are, and then design solutions as per the requirement.
Amazing. Fascinating. I think what we do supports this industry. Like, for example, I work with a lot of corporates, and it's very much the emotional awareness part of things, the conscious leadership, and the empathy that we coach in there. But it's the same thing. It's like you listen to the problems, you understand what is the gaps in it, and then you give them this. It's a science.
It is
absolute science, but at the same time, it's very human. There's a very human element of it. Here's a little side topic though.
Okay.
If it's not, it's like what you said, it's an individual. It's very individualistic. Like you cannot just. It's not like a blanket. How do you feel about horoscopes then? The ones that you see in the journals and the news and everything. That's for like, if you're born in this time at this time, like how do you feel about those?
Okay, that's interesting. See, that's again very generic, you know. So they say like, people born, they follow more the Western astrology follows more the sun sign, So it says that, suppose you're a Libran, like, so you're born between 24th September to 25th October, and this is what is going to happen with you. So there are millions and billions of Librans, so not, all of them will not have the same destiny or same characteristic traits, you know. So it's very generic, you can't just blindly follow that. I don't know what is the reason or the logic behind, doing that, but then that's okay. I somehow am not able to connect with that prediction.
Maybe just take it as one data point of many data points. But do this, go into the science and look for and do the research. If someone listening today wants to start aligning their space, just one simple thing, what would you tell them?
Okay, one simple thing I would tell them is declutter, don't hoard things. Because see, Vastu is all about the 5 elements: air, water, fire, earth, and sky. Everything on this planet is made up of these elements. And when we balance these elements, again, that internal alignment of energy also happens. And that is what gives us the clarity. When you clutter a place, you see, your mind also gets cluttered. Right? When it is clear, see, the environment around you has an impact on you. It has an impact on your thought process also. Right? So my advice would be, minimalistic is rather an in thing, but I think more than it being a fashionable thing, it is what is actually needed for we humans.
It's an energy thing.
It's energy. The more closer we are to the nature, the better it is.
Yes, exactly. And the nature has order, it has design, and so we should follow that. Okay,
correct.
So this podcast is all about emotional intelligence and understanding ourselves deeply. And when I listen to you, I realize that everything that you're doing also is emotional intelligence, as we've talked about. Do you remember a moment or a client that really made you realize how deeply energy impacts emotion?
Energies impact emotions. I mean, see, when clients come to me, certainly, they're emotionally very disturbed. Right, and my job is certainly aligning their emotions with the energy only.
Of course. Of course, no problem. Okay, so you've worked with some of the biggest names. We've mentioned the business, from business magnates to celebrities across India and abroad. When people come to you, they're often at crossroads. So personal, emotional, we've talked about a couple of those, or professional. What's something that fame or success can't protect anyone from? Something you see across people who seek your guidance?
Well, that's a very important question. I love answering this question, right? Because majority of people who come to me think that, money is everything in life, and that's good. If you have money, there will be no problems in life. That's the solution to all the problems in life. Well, no. I have such clients who are really, really, really moneyed, and or very successful, even very powerful.
Yes.
And still the kind of challenges they face, when I hear to their stories, when I hear to the challenges, I feel, people being with less money are certainly better and are not facing those kind of challenges. And believe me, Taylor, I've traveled all over the world. The kind of problems, the challenges are universal.
Yes.
Everybody, human psyche, you understand
Yes.
better, human psychology, human psyche is the same everywhere.
Yes.
So challenges are more or less the same,
Yeah, the human condition is the
human
same.
condition is same.
We have different details, but the human condition is the same.
Is the same. So I would say, it's not money or success or power which will, is the solution to the problems in life. No, it's
Not
not.
at all.
Yeah.
No, not at all. In fact, that complicates a lot
Yeah.
of our problems. So talk to us a little bit about which celebrities' chart you enjoyed reading the most.
Enjoyed reading the most. So there are a lot of them, but my personal favorite is the chart of Mrs. Indira Gandhi, the Prime Minister of India.
Okay.
Her chart has some powerful and very unique combinations which I haven't seen in anybody else's chart.
Okay, amazing.
From being a shy child to losing her mother at such a young age,
yes.
and marrying against the wishes of her father, and the way she shaped herself as the, leading lady of the country, being the Prime Minister of the country, and
Yeah.
being a powerful Prime Minister of the country is really amazing. So her horoscope is an example horoscope. In fact, people who are learning astrology, I would want them to, just refer to her horoscope, read the kind of combinations that she has. She has, 6 exchanges, something called as Mahabhagya Yoga, which is a very rare and a very powerful and a potent yoga,
Yes.
So, and there are so many other positives that you see in her chart, and that is what makes her what she is, what she was.
Yeah, amazing. I can only imagine really to actually see what that would be like, or actually understand it, frankly. Speaking about something I don't really understand, but I feel quite a bit, is so Mercury is in retrograde right now.
Yes.
I always know when that Mercury is in retrograde. I am very sensitive to this. I know this is not a terrible one for me, but it's definitely in retrograde. And the way that I feel it is a lot of miscommunication, a lot of disorganization, like dysfunction, a lot of dysfunction, not necessarily fundamental dysfunction, but just little details which can get really aggravating. From an EQ standpoint, I know when Mercury's in retrograde, I literally tell my team, I'm like, Mercury's in retrograde. So I may be a little bit this way. I can feel it this way. Let's give ourselves a little bit more space to process this. Tell us exactly what that means, that Mercury is in retrograde, and what can people do when it is in retrograde? Because I'm telling you, it definitely affects us.
Okay, so now the answers will be a little technical. So when Mercury is the planet which is closest to Sun, right? And when Mercury is 15 degrees to 24 degrees away from Sun, which is, since it's very close to Sun, it becomes retrograde. So in a year, 3 to 4 times Mercury becomes retrograde. It is a planet which maximum of the times becomes retrograde, right? Now Mercury is a planet which governs our emotions, right? Not Moon. Moon is our thought process. Now you're thinking something, or you say, my mind is running. So, thoughts are running. So that we see from Moon, right? But when it comes to emotions, how do you handle that thought process is Mercury. There are days when you feel very nervous, you feel excited, you're sad, you're low. All this is governed by Mercury. Then most important, Mercury is the planet for communication. Now everything is communication. You and I sitting here talking, this is communication. The thought of expression is communication, and that is governed by Mercury. Mercury also is the planet we see for documentation. So when Mercury is retrograde, if you're signing or getting into some documentation work, please be careful. Read the document thoroughly and then, sign a document. Or if some important, documentation has to be signed, and if you can avoid the retrogression period, that is certainly better. But if you can't, but then just be careful during this period. And yes, when Mercury is retrograde, there is a lot of emotional upheaval. There are a lot of miscommunications, misadjustments. It so happens, that, sometimes someone says something and you get hurt. And then after a few days, that person comes and says, oh, I did not mean it. And that clarification happens. So the first situation happened when Mercury was retrograde, and second situation happens when Mercury becomes direct.
Exactly, which is fantastic.
Right?
And evidently that's soon. So let's hope. No, but there was a Mercury in retrograde this year that was very intense. This was in the earlier part of the year. This was like around May, something like this, May, June. Does that sound right? Okay, what was happening in that one? Because that one was awful for me.
So see, now when you say that happened to you, now that's very individual specific.
Yes.
Now that depends entirely that particular Mercury retrogression was happening in which sign, which house of yours was activated at that time.
Yes.
Now, since you're saying it was very strong, so I'm assuming maybe, it was connecting with moon, because thoughts with emotions is what leads to more upheaval, ups and downs.
Exactly.
So right now, you and I are sitting and talking, it's not just Mercury which is retrograde. Right now, even Jupiter is retrograde, even Saturn is retrograde.
Oh, they're all retrograde
Yes,
right now?
they all are retrograde.
Oh, goodness.
And they
okay,
all
everyone,
are,
brace yourself. It's not over yet. No, I'm just kidding.
And all of these are retrograde in watery signs. So therefore, you'll hear news related to water bodies, cyclones, any calamity happening related to water.
Interesting.
Right? So this is how we connect and make predictions.
Right, yeah, amazing. If
But Mercury is getting direct, by next week.
Soon. You can feel that it's coming out of it, because when it goes into it. But whatever happened earlier in this year for me was something else, because I was like, wow, it was like almost like you could feel it. It was like that. Anyway. It's a science. We've established that it's a science. I hope everybody has been paying really good attention to this.
Yeah.
It's a hard science. So does that mean that everything you're going to read, if you look at somebody's chart, it's written in stone and that's it?
Yeah.
Is that what that means?
No. So see, we have the power to change our own destiny. Okay. Certainly, whatever is written will happen. You can't change that. I'll give you a very interesting example. Now, you're destined for good food. Okay. Right? You go to a 5-star, where there's a buffet laid, right? You were destined, so you reach there. Now, what you pick up and eat is your free will. So we all humans have something called as free will,
yes.
Where we can change or shape our destinies accordingly. Like I remember there was, this couple parent, they came to me with their 16-year-old kid, and the kid was very confused as into what career path to follow. Now, the father was a businessman, the mother was a lawyer, and both of them wanted the child to follow their professions, right? Because both of them were successful. Now, this kid was confused. The parents are further adding to the confusion. Now, seeing his chart, I could guide him that, following this profession will be better for him. He'll be happy and will be more successful in it.
Okay.
Right? Now, eventually, the child will only study. He will only pursue, do all the hard work and follow it. But as an astrologer, I just showed them the path. Right?
Yes.
And that showing the path and taking the right decision will shape his destiny.
Yeah,
see, don't we all say, oh, I did not know this. Nobody guided me then. Had I known this, things would have been different for me. So here where astrology's role comes, and it becomes very important, getting the right kind of guidance at the right time.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. That's amazing, because it's exactly what I say about emotional intelligence when I teach emotional intelligence to youth. Like I teach a lot of students that are at grade 9 and through grade 12.
Yeah.
And the first thing I say to them when I meet them for the first time, besides explaining who I am, is I always say, I'm just giving you the tools that I wish somebody had given me at a younger age, that I learned through life, through necessarily the hard way or through my own learning, failing and then refailing and then relearning and then all those other things.
Exactly.
Like I learned it this way. So now I'm in a place where, yes, I have the science. Yes, I've studied. Yes, I have the degrees, all those things. But at the same time, I would love to have somebody just kind of given me the idea of it when I was younger, so that I could have picked up on it quicker and maybe avoided some of the things that I didn't necessarily have to go through.
Exactly.
Some of it I'm glad I went through, because that's where I got here.
Yeah.
But there are certain things that I would like, you know what?
Correct.
I could have saved myself, for example, my issue with perfectionism that I wish I didn't have. Like I really could have addressed that sooner. Would I have still have had it? Absolutely. But I could have addressed it sooner. Things of that nature.
Yes. So you answered the question, astrology is a wonderful tool.
It is a tool, which is exactly. And I think that's one huge link between emotional intelligence and astrology.
Correct.
Okay. So now my favorite part, which is the rapid fire. Okay. So quick.
Yeah.
Whatever comes to mind, big energy. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
One thing people misunderstand most about astrology.
That it's a superstition, which it is not. It's a science.
Yeah. One Vastu mistake most people make at home.
Okay, so when we do Vastu, we see the directions in totality of a property.
Okay.
Generally, people see room-wise. Suppose we're doing a Vastu for residence, you have to see all the directions of the entire house, not going to each individual room and then checking the directions.
Okay.
So this is one mistake mostly people do, and then they call me and ask me questions.
Okay. The planet you feel most connected to?
Well, I feel most connected to Jupiter, because that's a planet for wisdom, knowledge.
Me too. Me as well. Moment in your journey that felt destined?
getting into astrology and also writing a book, I'd never thought, but then when I wrote one, and when I look back and when I get the feedback, I feel very happy. It really feels nice.
The one value you live by no matter what.
Honesty. Always be honest, whatever may come your way.
Always, always.
Yeah.
One place in the world that instantly recharges your energy.
Well, there can be two. One place that I really go and I would really advise everybody to go is Varanasi, Banaras.
Yes.
That place has some energy. And otherwise, I really like the vibrancy of London also.
Okay, amazing. If you could give one message to every listener today in one line, what would it be?
Okay, so astrology doesn't changes destiny, but it certainly changes decisions.
Okay, fantastic.
Right? So with astrology, you can make the right decision and that can further shape your destiny.
Amazing. One change anyone can make today to invite positive energy.
Think positive, that is one thing.
Yeah, absolutely. If you weren't an astrologer, what do you think you'd be doing today?
So like I said, I feel more connected to Jupiter. So knowledge, learning. So maybe something to do with learning, teaching, or being a researcher, that I'm doing researches in astrology as
Amazing. Well, I think you are doing that, right?
Yeah.
So I think you're aligned, even if you weren't doing this.
Yeah.
Your biggest personal superstition, if you have one.
Well, I'm here to debunk superstition. So I have none superstition. I have no superstition attached with me.
Yeah, I think very interesting on that topic because I used to be not super superstitious, but I followed a couple of them. And now since I've been on this journey, the self-awareness journey, this understanding the energy connection journey, everything else, I don't have them either anymore.
Yeah.
So I think you just release those,
Yes,
you see that they're really a block for you.
Yes.
They're a very big block.
That's what clarity brings.
Yeah,
no?
clarity does bring that in so many different ways.
Correct.
Well, thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you so much
I could
for
have you
having
here
me.
for hours. I cannot, this is just amazing. So thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoy this. What I love most about Ridhi's journey is that she reminds us that the stars don't decide our destiny. They simply reveal where light and balance already exist within us. Her work shows that alignment isn't something we seek outside. It's something we return to in our homes, our hearts, and our choices. Because when energy, purpose, and peace fall into rhythm, success becomes effortless. Until next time, stay grounded, stay aware, and remember, the universe always mirrors your inner state.